Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 2020 My Team Career Mode, episode number 30 today for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Season 2. If you guys did miss the previous one at Monaco, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one. That was a very good Grand Prix, I'll just say. I think you can maybe guess by the title how it was a very decent one here at the Principality. But going into this episode then, we have another sponsor renewal to look at, and this time I am going to look at something different. We had Cassandra before, which was achieving a top 4 finish for the goal bonus. But now, you know, we've got, spoiler alert, we've got that win under our belt for ourselves personally. Sainz has already won once, and we've been getting quite regular podiums. So I feel we could go for a higher goal. So we're going to go with this sponsor. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. Xenon, I think. I don't know. I'm probably said that wrong anyway. But achieving a podium finish is the goal bonus there. It's a decent bonus if we get that. The weekly salary also is a little bit higher. So the base salary we get from the sponsors is now 1.6 million, and then with the bonuses it might be a further 1.6 or something like that. So that's going to be very decent. Obviously you can see financially looking very strong, but we're, you know, making sure we have a good foundation to re-sign Sainz before we go ahead and spend any more money on HQ. And to be fair, we don't need to spend money on HQs right now. You know, we're not hitting that bottleneck limit of the R&D tree. We've got 4 major downforce upgrades to still do on the aero side, which was tempting, but at the same time I don't actually feel like we're lacking a bit of downforce right now, because I'm running quite high wings because we've got such a good engine now underneath us, so we can kind of have that compromise. So instead I'm going to go for a chassis upgrade just to try and help the low speed corners, still having issues rotating the car in certain areas where, you know, there's a little bit of understeer kicking in, or the kind of turning is not as sharp as I wanted to. So hoping that the weight redistribution upgrade may help that out, a major one. Now we can rush the upgrade and it will come in for this race at Azerbaijan, or we can just do standard development and it will come in for Montreal, the Canadian Grand Prix. I feel risky. I want to risk it because otherwise we have no upgrades coming in for this episode, and we have 2 episodes in a row pretty much with no upgrades that are going to really affect the car. I think we had an ERS upgrade obviously last time, but that really didn't affect things at Monaco. So we're going to go ahead and rush this upgrade and hope it comes in. Obviously there's a big chance it doesn't, but you got to try these things. If you don't, obviously you'll just never know, basically. So before we get on to moving through the activity timeline and seeing that's going to come through, we have to obviously choose said activities. Going to go for the bottom 3 then. Funded team event. That's going to boost the morale of every department. We got the sponsor, visiting the sponsor HQ, and then sponsor advertisement, so we earn some money back and also get the team acclaim up. And we're actually getting a little bit closer now. We're at like level 18, I think, and level 20 is that 4th and final sponsor slot. So we might just be able to get that final sponsor and get some real good money added on. Because imagine a 4th sponsor added on. If we get all bonuses, we could be looking at, you know, nearly 2 million per race if you've got all bonuses. So that's going to be quite exciting to get closer and closer to that. But we go through the activity timeline then, and looking on the left-hand side, and you can see there the chassis upgrade does come in. So rushing the upgrade has paid off big time. That's a major upgrade on the car there. Of course, we have the ERS upgrade, which was still pending from Monaco because that failed in the Monaco episode. So we've got a major upgrade on the engine and the chassis, which means on the R&D graph, we are now the best engine on the grid, and ironically, we're the best chassis on the grid. That's quite funny because we started off the season, we had the whole entirety of season 1, we're one of the worst chassis on the grid, and now we've got the best one. So it's a real awesome turnaround on that side of the car. So going into the race weekend then, looking at the R&D graph, a really steep upward curve then towards Mercedes. But the thing is now, as I mentioned last episode, this next phase of the season, we may plateau from here on out, because the next upgrades we would probably look to do are the aero upgrades, but those all cost at least 1,350 points plus. So we're, you know, down to quite a few R&D points now. So it's gonna take time to kind of build up those points and do those upgrades. So it may be slow movement from now on, but at least we've got a great foundation of being this close now to the silver arrows, and a little bit further ahead of obviously our rivals, you know, the guys we've been fighting at Ferrari, Red Bull, and such. But having the best engine on the grid is a major plus for us going into Baku. Obviously long main straight, but at the same time we need a good chassis because you've got so many 90-degree corners, very slow corners in sector 2 especially, where you need to rotate the car, and that's all to do with the chassis, kind of how it moves about, the weight shifting. So that will also help us out quite a lot. So this could be actually a very good Grand Prix for us performance-wise. And so with that, we move into qualifying then. Q1 on a set of soft tyres here, trying to get in the lap to make it through, obviously, into the second part of qualifying. Bit of a big lock up there, and a lot of oversteer. I must say, for the car theoretically being great around this circuit, this first lap in qualifying on low fuel was not that great in terms of the confidence boost. I don't know what it was. The rear end was just very snappy. We're running a lot less aero than we were at Monaco, remember? So I think maybe my kind of muscle memory on my right foot was very much used to the extra downforce at Monaco, whereas here at Baku, I think I'm running 5 wings, so a bit of a compromise to make sure we're good in a straight line, but still enough wings to have, you know, the downforce in the corners. But it's the same wing setup I ran last season, but obviously the car has got much better in both stages, in the straights and the corners, so I felt like we didn't need to change the setup from season to season in that kind of sense. But for sure, I wasn't really used to the maybe the lack of downforce versus Monaco, so it wasn't a great lap. It was actually a pretty horrendous lap to say it was on soft tyres. So to that effect, I got on mediums, because like we did earlier on in the season, I think I can do a much better lap time even on mediums, because that first lap was so slow. At the moment, already gaining, you know, 3-4 tenths into turn 1, but in turn 2, Pierre Gasly, of course it's him, he blocks me into turn 2. We get rather close to show our disgust at that, and he's lost us all that time. We had like nearly 4 tenths up with the momentum I was carrying into that corner, and we lost it all behind the AlphaTauri, and now we're in negative delta, and now we're in real issues. We're only in P19 right now as we swing through now into the last sector. We've gained some time in sector 2 and that first part of sector 3 as we go through down towards the kind of motorway section of this circuit, down the long main pit straight. We're going to gain just over 2 tenths to 2.5 tenths, maybe DRS open. Will that be enough though for us as we cross the line? It's up into P14, purple last sector. That last sector was godly there for us to help us out there. We block off Ocon actually, unfortunately, but P14 should be enough. But as we go through to the end of this session, oh, it's a disaster. Absolute calamity for us. Sainz is way up there, and we are out in Q1 with what could be a very good car in the race. And this time, unlike Spain, I have no one to blame but myself. It was not a good lap. It was not good enough. That first lap on softs was horrendous. I should have been dialed in more. And then the second lap, well, that wasn't my fault. I do feel like I very much got blocked by Gasly. But of course, the game is not going to give him a penalty whatsoever. The only caveat and kind of, you know, silver lining is, I guess, and comfort is our rival in game right now. As obviously, we're going toe-to-toe with Vettel for those acclaim points. Vettel is also out in Q1, so he's had a pretty horrendous qualifying as well. So both of us are now on the second last row of the grid for tomorrow's race. You know, also another good thing maybe is we can try a one-stop strategy versus the guys in the top 10 may have to do a two-stop. So unlike Spain, we might be the ones benefiting from one less stop maybe, but it's still going to be a bit of a climb. But unlike Spain, it's Baku, so there are a lot of long straights where we can just use the power and abuse the engine to overtake cars. So I'm feeling a bit more positive about making the places back than we were at Spain, but it's still not ideal. Not the way I wanted to start this race weekend, coming off the back of a race win at Monaco, you know. But things happen in F1. Let's go to the grids and try and make up for it.
And a warm welcome to you from Azadlik Square, heart of Baku and home, of course, to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. With high speeds, tight corners and few runoff zones, many are expecting a safety car here today, so our drivers will have to stay very much on their toes and hopefully away from the barriers. The Baku city circuit measures roughly 6 kilometers and is made up of 20 corners and 2 DRS zones. The circuit winds around the narrow city, through the old town, and even brushes against the city's medieval walls. However, as beautiful as the setting is, this track is also a ferocious technical challenge, where the smallest of mistakes could lead to catastrophic consequences for all of our drivers. And as always, a man with plenty of racing experience joins me in the commentary box. Today it's Anthony Davidson. Tell me, Ant, you're no stranger to surviving the melee of turn 1. So how do you keep out of trouble when there's so much going on around you?
There are 3 main things to worry about there, Crofty. Positioning, awareness and discipline. First, you have to put your car in a bit of space and make sure you have room to react to what the others are doing. Then you have to watch your mirrors and listen to the sounds around you to get a sense of where everyone is. And finally, just don't get too greedy. Just because a gap exists doesn't always mean you should go for it.
Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, and it's Lewis Hamilton alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Bottas, Sainz, Max Verstappen and Perez, Ricciardo, Stroll, Gasly and Daniel Kvyat, Giovinazzi, Russell, Lando Norris and Ocon, Matsushita, Grosjean, Kevin Magnussen and Alexander Albon. Vettel, the owner-driver, Aitken, and Nicholas Latifi. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today?
So like I said, strategy-wise, we will be at an advantage compared to our teammate and the top 10 because we will be able to start on, well, any tire we want to. And the recommended, like it was last season, strangely, is to start on the hard tires, then go to a different set. So we're going to go to a set of medium tires and extend that medium tire stint as much as we can, basically, to try and get off these hards as quickly as we can. Although they are an okay tire, you know, it's not too bad at the start of the race. And of course, there are going to be a lot of people around us alt on hard tires, but obviously, just as a way of going, I'd rather be on a more aggressive compound on the mediums and deal with the tyre wear at the end of the race. But as I said, it's going to be a bit of an easier time maybe compared to Spain to get through the traffic, but it's still going to be a challenge at the end of the day. It is a very tight and twisty circuit in Sector 2, so we need to make up for what was a very horrendous Saturday. Here we go then to 5 red lights to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and we're underway. It's a good getaway initially compared to Sebastian Vettel, but then towards turn 1, nowhere to really go. We try to go down the inside of Alexander Albon. It's 4 wide nearly there as the Haas goes round of Magnussen, and in the end Vettel re-overtakes me, so actually back down to P20 then, even though I tried to get him. We go back down the inside of the German, our rival in this season as it stands, but he just gets great traction off that corner and we're unable to get him. So again, a bit of a slow start like we had in Spain almost, you know. Very different, you know, circumstances of how we're at the back, very different circumstances of the corners and how they ebb and flow compared to Catalonia. But again, a bit of a slow getaway, not exactly the punchy one I kind of want and need in a way. And we move now on to the end of lap number 1 to that effect. And we're chasing after Alexander Albon then, who got overtaken by Vettel. And Albon with a massive issue there. Now, I've never seen that on that corner. Albon clouted the wall and the barrier. And I think a bit of the curb as well must have upset the rear end of the car. And his rear end completely stepped out there. Yeah, I've never even seen a player really get it that bad in that corner. I've never had that bad in that corner, so very, very odd mistake from Albon then. So he's down the order up into P19, and now we start chasing after Vettel, settling down and getting to a bit of a rhythm and groove of this Grand Prix and using and abusing the engine power and ERS as well. Remember that extra major ERS upgrade we got this episode now. It was going to come in for Monaco, it failed, but now it's here, and it's definitely helping us out quite a fair bit, because if you watch the bottom right, how much we're harvesting in every brake zone here is so much. Like, we're able to use, you know, a good 20 to 30% of ERS down that back straight, or main pit straight I should say, and we're able to kind of, you know, get it all back basically in turns 1 and 2 just due to the heavy braking and the way we recover that energy. So we've overtaken Vettel, then had to do a bit of work in turns 2, but we got the job done. And now looking at the back of the 2 Haas cars, getting very close, I must say, to the left-hand side wall there twice now in a row, lap 2 and lap number 3. But we're gaining on Magnussen at a rate of knots here. Magnussen goes for a move on Grosjean, so it's going to be 3 wide as we go for the double pass on both Haas F1 cars there into turn 1. A little bit too hot, a little bit wide, and Magnussen gets it down the inside. He's still actually going for it. Fair play. He shoots it through. Late braking. He almost puts us in the wall there, so getting a little bit sheepish as the rear end steps out as well as the oversteer kicks in. But we are eventually going to get the second bite of the cherry DRS and get the job finished and done on Magnussen, thankfully. And now get onto the back of Nobu Matsushita in the Renault, and he's chasing after Lando Norris in the McLaren. Can we go for another double pass, maybe, dare I say? Because we've got the Renault looking to overtake the McLaren, so if we can maybe catch both of them up in the same way. Meanwhile, Sainz is already in for his first pit stop, so you can see what I mean. You know, the top 10 are going to be real under pressure with that 2 stop. They've already made their first stop as we go and make it look very easy, overtaking a further 2 cars. Although, once again, deja vu, the Renault is now the one down the inside. So twice now, the car is able to go down the inside. This time we go for a switchback move, and it's a lovely one, I must say there. Great traction, and we're able to get on the power a little bit earlier than the Renault car and get up into P9. It will be eventually P8 as we move into lap number 7, as we've got some further pit stops for those guys in the top 10 who started on soft tyres, remember, worn soft tyres from qualifying, so they're going to be doing a 2 stop. So we've already jumped quite a fair few people, and remember, those guys have got 1 more pit stop, I've got 1 more pit stop, so we are going to make a good leap forward. So in a way, you know, it's not obviously recommended you qualify low on purpose, but in a way, it's circuits like these when the 1 stop can be quite powerful. You know, it is actually quite a good thing to be on you know, harder compounds at the start of the race to make that 1 stop work, something that sometimes you just can't do if you're in a top car. because, you know, we're not at that stage of career mode yet where the tyre upgrades have come in, where you can make a one-stop work off the soft tyre, the option tyre that we use in qualifying. You know, it has to be a two-stop. I'm sure in later seasons, you know, season 3, 4, 5 especially, once the tyre upgrades are there for most teams, we'll be able to do one-stops from the soft tyres, but at the moment it just isn't possible. But anyway, back to talking about our race now. Lap number 8, looking for a late move on Ocon. Oh my lord, that is very, very close. A little bit too late there. The McLaren actually very good in straight line. We may have the best engine on the grid, but remember the McLaren, I think, is still the 3rd best on the grid. So Ocon showing why and how, and the proof of that, basically, because he's pretty quick in a straight line. I have to wait a whole nother lap to actually get him here onto lap number 9 with DRS and a bit of ERS used at the start of that straight. And we're now up into P2 of this Grand Prix. Russell in first place in the Alfa Romeo, quite further ahead as he starts up a little bit higher than us. But we now go 3 laps later onto lap number 12, and we're now going to come in for our pit stop. The race leader, and I think the pole sitter, that was Leclerc. He was right up our chuff, but he's, of course, got to make one more stop like we're just making right now. So, actually, if you think about it, we're already pretty much there with the race leaders. Like, we could be in a very good position. This is how overpowered, unfortunately, the one-stop can be at circuits like these, which I don't really agree with. It's a great thing right now for us, but I don't really agree. It's not really how it should be, but it's kind of a tricky situation with the game versus real life. Like I talked about it at Spain in that episode. It's a thing, you know, the midfield pack is so tight that's why it becomes so overpowered. And speaking about the pack being mega tight, this was a replay as I came into the pit stops. This was whilst I was in the pit lane. These guys scrapping away. It's like 2x2 formation here. You've got the Mercedes of Bottas and then he's going side by side with Sergio Perez in the AlphaTauri, and then Albon on the outside of the McLaren there in the racing mode car. Remember, Albon was he qualified low with us, I think it was. I think in P18 or just ahead of us. So he was quite near to me in Sebastian Vettel. So now he's making his way, and he's actually over to the pink Mercedes car, has overtaken the black Mercedes car. How about that? Albon showing Bottas the ropes on a set of hard tyres as well that he started on, remember, and Bottas is on a fresh set of mediums that he's just pit onto, doing a two-stop, remember. So very odd. So Albon kind of really embarrassing him in that kind of way. And also you can see there in the background, Carlos Sainz, my teammate, stuck in the middle of that pack there, as well as Lewis Hamilton on a set of hard tyres, though. That's the difference. So maybe Hamilton from the top 10 is doing a one-stop because he's on hards. He's pit onto hards, whereas Sainz and Bottas are on medium. So there may be a difference there. And so once again, the championship leader, Hamilton, may have just done a master stroke there of going and making the one-stop work somehow. So maybe he's got the tyre wear to do it, whereas others don't. Meanwhile, back to our world, lap number 15 then. So over halfway done of this Grand Prix. We're down in P16, but don't fret. We've got a long way to go and plenty of free places to get with pit stops being made eventually. But right now, we're looking at some actual positions on track here with Giovinazzi and Lance Stroll. Gio on a set of hard tyres. I don't know what his situation is in terms of where he was on the grid. Stroll, I think he must have started on softs or mediums and is now on a set of hard tyres going to the end, but I think he was in that mid-pack. But you can see these two squabbling, and I'm trying my best to, poke my nose in there, but it's just not working at the moment. Giovinazzi, with Stroll especially, so slow through that right-hander, so I'm getting so frustrated now in the cockpit. I can see the bottom, the top right there, red first sector. It's going to be a red second sector. I can go so much quicker than these two right now, but they're just so slow. But as I mentioned, even though you've got these long straights, you've got this second sector, which is so difficult to pass in. I just don't have the overspeed versus the Alfa Romeo, because the Alfa we've seen so far has been a pretty quick car in a straight line. And remember also, to say we've got the best engine on the grid as we go sailing around the Alfa Romeo and just about keep it within the confines of the track, to say we've got the best engine, a lot of that will also be the ERS and fuel. So it won't be, pure engine power like some other engines on the grid, like the Alfa Romeo car or maybe the McLaren or the Mercedes. They might have pure engine power over us, whereas we have the advantage with ERS and the fuel. So it's the best engine on the grid in different kind of ways. But now we go for a massive lunge on the inside of Stroll. It's very close on the right, but I got so fed up of that entire previous lap. I had enough. Had to make the dive bomb, and we're up into P8 as a whole gaggle of cars have come in now for their second stop in this Grand Prix. So 10 laps to go in this race here. 9 actually now as we cross the line for lap number 17, and we're closing up to Daniel Ricciardo. Ahead of him is Max Verstappen in the other Red Bull car, and I've been told by my engineer that Verstappen might have issues with his car, so he may be slow, and we might get 2 positions in quick succession here. We can try and overtake Ricciardo quick quickly does it on this end of this lap here, trying to navigate the right-hander as best we can, getting a good slingshot using a lot of ERS, and we don't even need DRS then. So that's how powerful our ERS deployment is versus the Red Bull Honda, with the Honda in the back of our car, and we're waltzing past up into P6. Meanwhile, a lap later this is, away from us, a little bit further down the road this is though, Sergio Perez in the AlphaTauri overtaking Albon, and he's up the order, I think just behind Ricciardo now. So yeah, there you can see just up the road, there is Ricciardo, there's myself, there is Verstappen. So Perez doing really well in this Grand Prix in the AlphaTauri, and to be fair, Albon as well, as we mentioned before, as he overtook the Mercedes earlier. But we now move on to lap number 19, and Verstappen is so slow in a straight line there that we almost hit the wall, trying to fake to the left, go to the right there, being a little bit too aggressive maybe with the flamboyant overtake, but we get the job done nonetheless. And we're actually now, I've not even realised it really, but we're up in P3 in the podium positions here, and Hamilton's in P2 and George Russell is in P1. So the one stop has really worked really too well in a way, crazily well here for us, but even better for Russell. Let's watch on to that. Hamilton, I'm sure will catch him, but that's still going to be a bonkers result for Russell. Meanwhile now, a lap later this is, and you can see Verstappen is holding up Ricciardo so much that Ricciardo goes for the move, but look at Perez on the right in the more junior Red Bull team. The AlphaTauri has overtaken both Red Bulls and embarrassed the senior team. The Mexican is on fire. This is why AlphaTauri signed Sergio Perez then for this season. At the time, you know, when we went through from seasons 1 to 2, I was a little bit confused at why they signed him and why Perez left Racing Point, because Racing Point was a pretty damn good car in the last season, but this season AlphaTauri have been much better and much more consistent than Racing Point. So Perez has made the right move, and AlphaTauri have also done that because their driver is, you know, making the moves on two Red Bull drivers. Meanwhile now, further back, that's Albon. He actually made a pit stop. He was yet to make one when he got overtaken by Perez earlier. He's now on a set of soft tyres going to the end of the race, and he's got Bottas ahead of him. He's got my teammate, two McLarens, so let's watch out for that. Albon may be on fire for a very tasty end of this Grand Prix, but let's just talk about this man, George Russell, and also this man Hamilton in second place. Hamilton is in second. George Russell is legitimately in first place in the Alfa Romeo racing car, doing that one stop, but the difference was he started a lot further up the grid, I think, and also got through traffic a lot better than I did or Albon or Vettel ever did in the first stint. And so he's got this massive time advantage and gap to Hamilton and everyone in the top 10, or the original top 10 of the grid, I mean. So let's watch on, as also you saw there briefly, Perez is now pressurizing me. He's the only one, along with me, on the medium tires. I think also he pit a lot later than I did, so his mediums are fresher, and at the moment, 5 laps to go, he is pressurizing me, and my tires are now wearing. Like I said, we have to deal with the tire wear late on to the race. That was the sacrifice I made, going off the, you know, the hard tires that I don't particularly like, and now that's a big mistake there. Massive lock-up as we try and move the car whilst braking, and the lock-up's pretty damn big. And Perez now, oh my god, Perez down the inside in towards the Baku Castle section. This is not going to work well, Sergio. Please back out of this as we go toe-to-toe with the Mexican, and we're going to just get that. We lock up on the front right. Oh my, how close are we wanting to get this car to the walls here? This has become Survive Baku here in the middle of My Team career mode. That is very hairy there. Meanwhile, a little bit less scary and a bit more overtaking action for Albon on the soft compounded tyre. The only man on softs in the top 10, flying at the moment, overtaking one McLaren there of Lando Norris. Meanwhile, the other McLaren of Esteban Ocon is fighting my teammate Sainz as they both try and jockey for position for the right to go and attack Verstappen there in the second Red Bull car, obviously on the road. Ricciardo further up the road. Verstappen still with mechanical issues, I'm sure, so he's really slow, and you can actually see that as we move on now to the next clip. Already Ocon on the back of him, so this may be a 3-wide moment, you know, because Sainz could have a good slingshot here to overtake him. Ocon goes to the right, goes to the left then, and remember, it's Ocon and Verstappen. This could get very hairy, you never know, as Ocon powers past, and there goes Sainz. It is 3-wide. Meanwhile, it's also in the background, Albon overtaking Bottas, but it's Sainz to make the double pass on Verstappen and Ocon, and Albon does get the Mercedes car. So Albon is really, he's embarrassed Bottas twice now in this Grand Prix, and he might go ahead and embarrass some more people as he is flying in this Grand Prix on that Racing Point on a set of soft tyres. Verstappen even slower now through the next lap, and Albon to the inside. of his former teammate, remember, and that's a big middle finger to him in the cockpit as he flies past him. And at the rate he's going on the softest compound on this circuit, Albon might have a good chance of maybe overtaking Ocon, even maybe going at Sainz, my teammate, and Ricciardo. You never know. And actually, speaking of that, literally the next lap then, all action on board with Albon here. He overtakes the McLaren of Ocon. You can't really see it because there's a useless camera angle there from the F1 game. Thank you very much. But there he goes. You can now see confirmation in the background. And meanwhile, Sainz is also looking to maybe overtake Ricciardo there in the background. But we move on to lap 24. We've got 2 laps left to go when we cross the line. And Perez now is right up my gearbox here. We're using a lot of overtake mode to try and keep it ahead, but he's in the slipstream now. He's pushing us through. He's got DRS open, and I think this is going to be a slam dunk overtake. We're going to go easy in the overtake mode because I thought I could maybe try and slipstream him and maybe get him back into the next straight, basically, and use the DRS for myself to get him. But through turns 1 and 2, we're just quite poor because the tyre wear, the difference between the tyres that I've got and Perez has got is really night and day. And you can see the traction Perez gets off that second turn. Yeah, I think we've lost the podium, actually. It's a real shame to do it such a late on into this race, but I just don't have the grip. And if we move on towards the last lap, and you can see how much Perez has gained in that second sector, that he's over a second ahead of us now. So I've lost DRS, so for us, the race is kind of over here. But for the other car in this team, the action will not end as we move on towards the last lap of the Grand Prix. A bit further back is Sainz overtaking Ricciardo again with these very questionable camera angles, but there goes Sainz sailing through. So it is going to be a P4 and 5 finishing position, it seems like, in this Grand Prix. So we've done, obviously, very well to beat Sainz from the back of the grid pretty much, but you can see it's just the strategy. It's not me being faster than him, it's just the strategy, because look at that. Sorry, that's the biggest show of this strategy being so OP, because George Russell has just won the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in an Alfa Romeo racing car. Absolutely insane stuff there. It's Russell from Hamilton to Sergio Perez on the podium. We recover to P4 ahead of Sainz, but what a bonkers result.
A great win then for the Alfa Romeo team today. Tell me, Ant, how do you think they were able to deliver such an incredible result today?
Well, when you overtake that many people, I'd certainly hope you'd win the race. Their car was really effective in the slipstream here today, and the team will be pleased that they didn't cook the engine, given how long they were spending in the hot air behind other cars. They had a lot of confidence to push their tyres hard as well, especially going into the corners, which allowed for some late braking and some exciting passes.
So here they come now, out onto the podium. It's thrilling to see this team go toe-to-toe with the best teams in the sport and come out on top. What a superb victory from the Alfa Romeo team.
Insanity to see the young Brit in Alfa Romeo Racing overalls on the top step. He beats Lewis Hamilton, remember, at Bahrain in that race, and he's beaten him again, but this time it matters even more because it's a race win. His first race win of his entire F1 career. He won't be forgetting about that one anytime soon. Sergio Perez, he deserved P3. He was a lot faster than me, to be fair. And from where I was, P20, I'll take P4. You can see, though, Albon was P18, so I was correct. Albon was there with us at the very start, because, of course, I tried to overtake him into turn 1. So he also recovered very well to say he was quite slow and had that massive tank slapper issue on lap 1, where we overtook him very quickly on lap 1. So he recovered well. A calamity for both Ferrari cars. Vettel, I don't know how he didn't get through. Oh, actually, I know why. He did a 2-stop for some reason from the back of the grid. Very stupid. And then Leclerc, he was in first place, he was on pole, and he just bottled it there. So, calamity all round for those guys. Hamilton extends his lead in the championship. In terms of our team and for us, it's a very solid finish, actually, for us. P4-5, it's not a podium, so unfortunately, as we go on, we will equalise with Vettel on the rivalries there, so we're just a little bit ahead of him for that extra claim. Bonuses-wise, ironically, the first time we actually go a little bit higher on the bonus claims, and we don't get that bonus of getting a podium position, so we actually lose out on some funding but it could be a lot worse, to be fair. Obviously, we could have had a Spain repeat and just not got points today like we did at Catalonia, so I'm happy we recovered that highly, so I can't really complain, but we just can't be making mistakes like that when the stakes are so high in terms of trying to earn this extra cash to obviously improve the team, improve the HQs, and turn this car into a winning car consistently and trying to match those silver arrows up ahead. But in the end, still a very fun episode and a very decent one for us, but a more bonkers one just for the race results. George Russell, I can't believe he's won that race. That is how crazy that one stop is when you just get it right and it just clicks for you compared to the two stop. Mental. But guys, if you did enjoy the episode, be sure to hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you are new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I've been aarava. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of the day. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.